Hi all, welcome back to my channel. So in this video we'll be seeing something very interesting and very important topic for interviews, be it like a senior uh, senior level interview like 1-2 years experience, or even campus hires, right? Or even for your college campus exams. So it's a topic which is very common and to understand, and you should be intrigued to know why you should know this topic. So before going ahead, let me ask you one simple question. Do you know what happens in the background, or in the when you type google.com or any website, right? You search for leetcode.com or geeksforgeeks.com, google.com, or any youtube.com. What happens in the background? How do you are able to get that response which you get? Suppose I open this new tab and type here google.com, right? It give me, sorry, I opened a new tab, new window by mistake. I'll see it here only. Google.com. I get a some response. This screen with this image, with this search bar, with these two buttons and these some things, right? These footer notes are there. Why do I get this? How do I get this only, right? If you know the answer, uh, you can still watch to maybe you will learn something new. But if you don't, make sure to stick to the end of the video and we'll together try to learn how this happens, right? So what is this client server model? So this is the architecture, or like the name given to this process of communication, right? Like this model of like how we send or how we fetch data, right? Like when we type something. So yeah, this client server architecture model, as you can figure out from the name, is like one something must be client and something must be server, and there's a communication between going on between the two. So this model or this architecture is the foundation of how computers work or interact among each other, right? So first let's understand what is a client and what is a server. A client and server both are machines only. First of all, computer machines, right? So both are computers. what does what is the role of a client? To request data. Whenever a client is there, like what does client do? Hey, give me this, I want to know this. Okay, and server is the uh, computer or machine which knows everything or knows what client wants, and it will respond to the client, right? So if I, in our example, my machine, not even my machine, my browser is a client, right? Everyone browsers is a client, be it Google Chrome, be it Mozilla, be it Firefox. Every browser is a client, and our browser is making a request to fetch www.google.com, and our server is returning this entire page, whatever you see. So how does this happen? So that we'll see. So first you understand a client. What is a client? A client is something which asks for data, right? Also which wants to know something, right? So that's client. Okay. What's a server, right? What's a server? Server is something which sends a response. In this case, I asked for google.com and server sent me this page. So server is a computer which has stored this, and it sees, okay, someone is asking me this, I'll send you this google.com. Okay. So you must be getting some idea about what is client and what is server. Okay. So what's next, right? What's next is I want to know, how does this happen? I told you, right? Client will ask server and server will respond. How will our computer, our browser knows which server to ask this google.com? There are hundreds, millions, billions of machines in this our Earth planet, right? How will it know which computer, which server? Server is a computer. I told you which machine it should ask this. So think of it is like this, right? I have a letter. I want to send that letter to somewhere. Okay, I go to post office and say my friend name is Raj, right? I go to post office. Hey postmaster, will you will you give this letter to Raj? Post office master will say, what kind of idiot person you are? There can be, how will I know who is Raj, right? Tell me something more concrete information about this. Similarly, when I tell my server, hey server, tell me www.google.com, server does, okay, my client, when I tell my client, her client gives me www.google.com, client doesn't understand what is google.com, where is google.com, how will it know which server to ask, right? As same as postman doesn't know which Raj to send data, which Raj to send letter, my browser, my client doesn't understand whom it should request google.com. So what shall it do? What shall I do in my letter scenario? I will tell my postmaster, okay, I will give you the address, I will give you the pin code of the city he lives in, then you will deliver this letter to that city's post office, right? Postmaster will say, yes, very good, give me the city pin code and I will deliver. Similarly, my client will say, okay, if I if I know the IP address of google.com, right, or the address of google.com, forget IP word, only the address, what is its address, I will ask its server. Okay, I will ask the server, tell me the address of the server I should ask this request. Okay, so what it does is, I'll tell you here, let's go to this. So client needs to make a request to this server. Okay, what is my client? My browser. What is my server in this case? google.com. Okay, so google.com is not a server. The machine, this computer, there's a machine which is which is storing the information of this google.com, that is the server. But for simplicity we are referring google.com only as the server. Okay, so my client, my browser needs to know its IP address. My browser doesn't understand what is google.com. My browser doesn't understand what is leadcode.com. Okay, my browser doesn't understand what is youtube.com. Give me the address. Just like the postman needs the pin code of the city, our browser needs an address. What is that address? An address in an IP address, right? Every machine, every computer machine on this planet has a unique identifier. Just like every city has a pin code, every city, within every city, every area has a pin code. Similarly, every computer has an IP address. If you want to know more about IP address, I have written an article and mentioned its link in the description. Feel free to check it out. You will get a detailed uh, view of what is IP address, what are public IP address and private IP address, along with its use cases and applications. Okay, feel free to check it out. So let's come back to this video. What we understand till now, our browser, we have a client. Okay, browser needs to connect to make a request to client, but browser doesn't understand by name. Okay, what is google.com? We need to give it some address. What is that address? IP address. From where browser will get its IP address? There comes this DNS, domain name system. Okay, so before sending a request to the server, client will say, hey buddy, DNS, I have something called google.com, a domain name. Can you tell me its IP address? And DNS will do that. So that's the job of DNS, domain name system. We give domain DNS and a domain name as an input, and it will return us its IP address. Okay, I give it google.com, it will give me the IP address of the google.com. I give it youtube.com, it will return me the IP address of youtube.com. I give it leadcode.com, it will return me the IP address of leadcode.com. So that's what the DNS works is. Okay, and once I get the IP address of the google.com from the DNS, when our browser gets it, it can make the request to that IP address. Let's visualize how this client and DNS interaction works. Okay, so I have this open here, terminal open, right? I'll just close it, clear this thing here. Okay, so this is my Linux terminal. On my Windows, I'm running Linux using WSL. Okay, if you want to know more about WSL, let me know. I will maybe write an article or make a video on it. So let's come back, right? Okay, come back. Our browser needs to know IP address. How will browser know it? It will call DNS, give it the domain name, and it will return the IP address. Let's try to visualize it. So there's a command called dig in Linux. You can use it to visualize. This is my system. I want to know IP address of google.com. Okay, let's see what will it return. You see, it returns the IP address of google.com. If you see, it returns the IP address, right? So that's how our browser client and DNS interaction must also be working in some way, right? This is just a visualization. Browser must be passing google.com as the input. Hey bro, DNS, this is the my input domain name, return with the IP address, and DNS will return you the IP address, right? So now let's come back. Once we have this IP address, then it will make a request to the server, right? So there is not like what request it will make. There are several protocols to make a request, right? Several ways to make a request. One of them is HTTP, right? I don't want to go into HTTP detail right now. Just know one of the request protocols is HTTP. It's not like you can send anything, or you can. There are several ways a computer makes a request to another computer or server. And also similarly, there are several ways a server responds back to the client. Okay, so once client makes a request to server, right, through IP address, it's good. Let's come back to our old story of postmaster and letterman. I gave the postmaster the pin code of my friend Raj's uh, house location, right? It will go to the letter reaches that post office, but it hasn't still reached Raj. The postmaster of Raj city, Raj place, will collect the letter and then say, okay, which house should I send it to? Then he needs to know the house number of Raj. So two things are required here. First, for me to give, so that two two things need to be given from my side so that letter reaches Raj. Right. First is the pin code of Raj locality. Second is house number of Raj. Similarly, just giving the IP address of the server is not sufficient to make a request. So there is a one machine, right? It can be serving many applications. That IP address, that city has many houses. Similarly, that IP address can be serving many applications. One of them is google.com. So I also need to give it the house number, something analogous to house number in that IP address. Reach the server with that IP address and then ask the house number within that server. So what is analogous to house number? A port, right? So if I tell you, I will write here, insert a text box. Okay, I'll write it. So first, client sends request to IP address, then within the server with that IP address, it also client also needs to mention which port should I send request, right? Just as postmaster needs to know the pin location of Raj's house along with the house number of Raj so that letter safely and ultimately reaches him. Similarly, our client must mention the IP address of the server along with the port in which google.com is running on that server, right? So finally, it is reached. Okay, and now I should give you some demo so that you are able to visualize it just like I showed it for DNS, right? So again, I will open this and I will open two terminals. Okay, okay. If you see now, I will try to make you understand how it works, right? So this is a netcat command. Say I give some random port number 1234, right? So, and NC is netcat command. It's a command for network connections, to read and write network connections, and L stands for listening. So I'm listening on this port number on my device, right? Obviously. And here I will write, try to make a connection to this IP 127.0.0.1. This IP is called localhost. It's a reserved IP address. It will always point to the system on which you are running. Currently I'm running on my laptop, so this IP belongs to my laptop, Okay, this will always belong to the system on which you are running. And I want to listen to this. I have to make a connection. So I'm a client. I'm making this IP and this port. Make a connection. Okay, I make the connection, and here in my other screen, I'm listening to this port. I write something. Hello there. You see, I'm able to listen. In one of them, I am making a request. I'm making a connection to this my local computer on this port, and on the other side, you see, I'm listening on that port. So whatever I am writing or making a request there, I am able to see it, right? So yeah, so I think you must be able to visualize by now how client server connections work. One makes the request on the IP address and within that port, right? And then that connection, one side connections is reached. So our data, our request is made to server. And now the next step is server will respond to the browser, right? Server will respond. So I asked for google.com, it reached the server, the desired server, and then it will return me the google.com, this page, right? So how will it recognize me? So as I said, there are several ways to make a request. One is HTTP. So in that, whatever I send, one of the thing is my address also. You write a letter, you also mention to and then from address, right? Similarly, I mention my client's IP address also. So my server will recognize my IP address and then send the response to me only, not to anyone else. Okay. And when I make this google.com, it will give me this page. What does it return? Like if you see here, what is the return? Response is an HTML page. So I make this and then I get a HTML page as a response, and which my browser renders for me, which I can see. Let's see here. Go to network, clear everything, and make a call again. Okay. So you think these are the requests which my browser made. Forget everything. Just focus on the first one, www.google.com. I wanted to make this request. Like the status is 200, which means it's a successful request. Let's click on it and see the response. So you see, it's a doc type HTML page. So this entire thing is a HTML page response, right? So my browser, the server returned me this code, this HTML page, which my client or my browser was able to understand and render it on my screen, right? This is the code for the screen which you see. This was sent as a response by the server to me, to my IP address, which my browser understood and rendered it for as a proper UI. Okay, I hope you were able to understand. One quick thing like to mention before I wrap up this video. I have to mention about ports, right? So I mentioned here in this video 1, 2, 3, 4 random port, right, to make you understand. How will client know which port to understand? Like how should I know? I mentioned IP address, it is finding through DNS. How will it know which port? So as I told you, there are several protocols which clients follow to make a request, like HTTP, HTTPS, SSH, FTP. We can cover it later. And the ports are already pre-decided for them. Like HTTP always use at port number 80. HTTPS will always use port number 443. SSH will always use port number 22. So I hope you know. Just a wrap up. Client wants to make a request to google.com. It doesn't know what google.com is. It needs to know the IP address. IP address is asked for DNS. DNS gives me the IP address. Then I make a request using some protocol. That protocol has a pre-decided port number. Server gets the request. It says, okay, I need to give you the response. In response, it gives me a HTML page. My browser reads the HTML page and renders it as a UI so that I can finally see it, right? I hope you are able to understand something from the video and the demo helped you. If you want similar videos, please like the video. It will definitely help me and motivate me and inspire me. And any comments, anything you want to share, or do drop it in the comments. I read all of them. And until the next video, keep coding, keep learning. See you soon.